Welcome back to I-86 After Dark. Of course, you got me, the Ginger Hammer, Buffalo Bob's here. And tonight we are proud to have former Buffalo Bills safety and Richmond Hall of Famer Jeff Nixon joining the show. And Jeff, first, pleasure to have you here. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I think I got enough stamina to do a 1 hour show podcast.
You got it. Hey, me too. Me too. We all came back from Pittsburgh 6,
Yeah.
but at least we got a win out of it.
Yes, we did. And really, I tell you what, my wife, she passed away a couple years ago, but she was a big Pittsburgh fan, and she invited me years ago to go to a Steelers game against the Bills, and it was in Pittsburgh, and they just tore Jim Kelly up, man. They sacked him about 6 times. And it was first time Jim had played in Pittsburgh, and he's from Pennsylvania, and he wanted to
Right.
have a good showing, but it just shows you, boy, if you're not ready, boy, any team can whoop your butt.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
We saw
And
that
sorry.
this year with Miami. We saw it with the Texans. If you don't come to play, any team can whoop you.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yep. It's that saying, any given Sunday.
Yep. Or now it's Thursday or Monday or even Fridays.
Right. Or even sometimes the Saturday games.
Yeah. Before you know it, we'll have the whole week covered.
Yep, absolutely. So of course, we appreciate you being here and hanging out with us for the next little bit. And we'd love to jump into some of your playing days and some of what you're doing. So one of the first questions we always like to ask is what drew you to football? And when did you realize that the NFL was a real possibility for you?
I think it was probably after my sophomore season. I had made honorable mention All-American as a sophomore, and then going into my junior year, I had a really good year. I think I had 8 or 9 interceptions in my junior year, so they kept. So starting into my senior year, I was on a lot of people's radar, and then eventually after the season, they told me, well, I had 23 career interceptions. I'm still in the top 10 in all-time interceptions over a career in college. So I think that got the attention of the scouts. And so they sent a couple people down. They didn't have big combines like they do nowadays. Back when I got drafted, they just sent scouts to you. And Dallas sent a scout. The Bills sent a scout, obviously. Denver Broncos sent a scout. The Washington Redskins. I had Bruce Allen as a punter on my team, George Allen's son. And George said, Bruce told me his dad really wanted me to play with the Redskins. And that would have been my ideal thing because I'm from Northern Virginia. I played at Garfield, which is in Woodbridge, Virginia. It's maybe 30 minutes south of D.C. Yeah. And so it was really interesting that they didn't have any draft picks that year. They hold on for a second. I got.
Yeah, no problem.
It's interrupting me. George Allen had this motto: "The future is now." So he traded for all these veterans and gave up all his draft choices. But in the end, he won a Super Bowl doing that. It was an interesting thing. Now most coaches won't do that in this day and age. They're not going to forfeit the future just to get a team right now. But it was interesting. Here's a little story. So the Richmond Times-Dispatch, they came to me and said, Jeff, you're an All-American. You're going to go in the top maybe 4 or 5 rounds. Where would you like to play? And I said, anywhere but Buffalo. Because you got to remember, I got drafted in 1978. If you remember, in 1977, they had what they called the Blizzard of '77 in Buffalo.
Oh yes.
And all we saw down in the south was these mounds covering cars and almost rooftops of houses. It was, I was like, I can't go there, But after I got drafted, I came here, loved the place. I settled down. I live in Buffalo now, so I've been here since 1978, really.
Wow. God
Very
bless
cool.
you. But I actually want to ask you, because you mentioned something about not wanting to go to Buffalo. Do you think that maybe you would have had the same idea when you were drafted if it was like Green Bay or Minnesota at that time?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because they were cold weather and they didn't have indoor stadiums at that point either. Since then they've got indoor stadiums, but Yeah, I probably wouldn't have wanted, but for some reason, Buffalo stuck in my mind because I saw all these images of the blizzard and everything up here the year before, So,
Mhm.
but it was a good move for me to come here. Tony Green was the starter. He was an All-Pro for several years, but then he got injured and he wasn't quite as mobile as he had been in the past. And so the first year, I eventually got the starting job after about 10 games, and then. Then the following year I became the starter. They released him, but yeah, it was an interesting first year for me. I was used to starting every single game. I started every game in college. All 4 years, and then not to start. They made me the nickelback, and it was okay, but I knew I could be a better player, and really help the team. But Chuck Knox, he liked the veterans, man. He stuck with veterans unless they gave up on him or did something really, really bad. And that's what happened. Tony had gotten beat for a touchdown right at the end of the half of a Green Bay game.
Mhm.
And James Lofton went up and just took it, way up in the end zone. And at halftime, the coach came up to me and said, "You're starting the second half." And that was my big break, and I never gave it up after that until I got injured myself,
Right. Yeah. And James Lofton, another one I got to see play quite a bit back when I was younger. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And then he came to the
good player.
Bills. Great.
Yeah,
The Bills, too.
absolutely.
I mean, unfortunately for me, I'm actually, I grew up in a Jets household, but I kind of divorced myself from being a Jets fan because my dad was like, "Bob, you should be a Jets fan." I'm like, "Dad, no,
You know,
no, because fuck the Jets. That's all I'm going to apply to that."
he
I
didn't
never,
start. He didn't start early enough with you. He should have started when you were like 1 or 2. Like crush the table. How they.
yeah.
That's how you really get indoctrinated into the Bills
Yep.
at an
Yeah.
early age. And if you wait till you're like in high school or whatever, yeah, you formed your own opinions about who you want. And usually it's the team you like, the color of their jersey or their or the name of the team or their mascot or something. But
Mhm.
but I like people that they root for the hometown team. That's what I like. I hate to see fans that live here that vote that root for Miami, and I do have a couple friends that are like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that being with like baseball. Like, there's a lot of Buffalonians in Tom's neck of the woods and your neck of the woods that are like Blue Jays fans because there's no MLB team in Buffalo. I think they deserve one. But like for me, I have the Mets and I have the Yankees, and all my in laws on my wife's side are all Mets fans. And I'm like, well, looks like I'm going to be brought into this family. So screw it. Might as well just start watching now while I can. And sure enough, I've been watching for about maybe 20 years, but I wasn't crazy about baseball before I met my wife. Now I'm more into it than I was.
Right. Well,
Yep.
we are the only New York team, Buffalo. So
Very true. And we still are with the new stadium. So
absolutely.
Well,
Thank God. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say was that makes sense. It's the only team in the damn state. That's why I'm a Bills fan.
All right. Absolutely.
Yeah, but no, but I actually have a very interesting question for you because you mentioned that you grew up in Virginia and you played for Virginia Tech and you all, in that.
No, Richmond.
no, Richmond.
Oh,
Richmond.
Richmond. Sorry,
The
my
Spiders.
apologies.
The Spiders.
Yeah, my bad. I apologize about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, but I read your Wikipedia page. I don't know if they're bullshitting or you could correct me on this, but supposedly you have a what's it called? I lost a lack of word for it. Damn it. But if it comes back to me, I will. But you were born in Germany in the country of Felbrook. And what's the story behind that? And within your family being stationed there, and how long did you live overseas?
Yeah, I was born there. My dad was stationed there, and I was born there. And like a year later, we came back to the States. And then we moved around, and, my dad got stationed at a lot of different places. We were in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. Then we went back to Germany for 3 more years. 3 more years. And yeah, that was like I was in like the second, third, fourth grade at the time, and, but it was interesting. When I came to the Bills, somebody brought up the fact that my mother's maiden name was Bach, And he said, and he asked me, he says, "Are you related to Johann Sebastian Bach?" And I have an uncle. His name was Johann Sebastian Bach. We just called him John.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Oh, I don't know. I could be. I got a brother, an uncle that's named Johann." And so the next thing I know, they put out a football card, and on the back of that card, it shows me looking in a mirror with a picture of Johann Sebastian Bach in the mirror. And they said Jeff is a descendant of Johann Sebastian Bach, which yeah, that's probably not true, but that's what they put on the card, and I was like, "Oh Lord." That's it's
Very
just
cool though.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So people have asked me over the years, "Well, are you really related?" I said, "I don't know. I doubt it. But that's what they put on the card, so you got to believe it, right?"
Yeah, because I was doing some research before this interview, and I said to myself, I don't want to look like an ass. I just wanted to ride with that,
Yeah. But I loved growing up on bases. I got to meet so many different types of people, cultures, and stuff. And I got my start in football. I played for the Purple Plum Packers. How's that for a football name? The Purple Plum Packers. It was like Pee Wee League.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like it that much. I didn't like football. It was just too brutal for me. I was just a skinny little kid back when I was growing up. And I was like 170 when in high school. I was 175 pounds soaking wet. But I had good speed and good range. And that helped me. And so I got they picked me up, got a scholarship to the University of Richmond, and the rest is history. But yeah, I like Richmond. I got a brother that lives down there still, and I got a lot of friends. I probably have more friends there than I do up in Buffalo. I try to go down there as much as possible. I go to Jimmy Cerrito's Old Town Tavern in Herndon, Virginia. It's probably one of the best Bills backer bars there is in the country, boy.
Oh yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, one of my good friends actually was originally from Richmond also, and she's actually working overseas now. She actually has a really good engineering job that she picked up and moved with her family. But it's also cool too because now it's like, hey, you got the taste of home with Wegmans being down there now, and they're expanding further south and everywhere you go. So they're down in Richmond now. They're actually going to be in Charlotte this coming year, and actually they're building one in Pittsburgh. I found out too.
Wow.
So they're going south and they're going everywhere Bills fans are. So in that sense, so it's really cool to see that. But I did want to jump into your early days because, of course, back in 1979, you were a fourth round Bills. And what would you say the experience of draft day was like? And what were some of your first impressions on the organization and, of course, coming here?
Well, so I, like a lot of players, during my era, they didn't have the big Hollywood presentation of the draft, where they brought everybody up on stage, all that stuff. So I just sat in my dormitory room with my girlfriend and a whole bunch of friends waiting for the call, and I was hoping I would go maybe second or third round, but I had gotten a bad rap by one of the scouts that had come down there to time me. They came right after we had gotten back from spring break. I wasn't in really good shape. He tested me right after our very first practice, spring practice, and I was like dead tired. He said, "Well, can you run a 40-yard dash for me?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do that, but it's on grass." He wanted me to just take my shoulder pads and helmet off, but keep my pads on my pants, And I was like, I ran like a 4.6 or something, and that's not a very good time, not bad, but not a good one. And then when I came to the Bills, I ran the fastest 40-yard dash in minicamp. I ran a 4.46. Jerry Butler ran a 4.48. And they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe how fast I was. And I was kind of deceptive because I had long strides, I was 6'4.5", so I had long strides. So I covered a lot of ground pretty fast, even though my legs weren't maybe moving as fast as a little bitty guy, So, but, I embraced Buffalo when I got here, and I found out the people are really good. They're blue collar. It's a blue collar town. They live and die Buffalo football, which I love. And it's just it's a great place to be a fan and to be a former player too. They really they pour their hearts out to us. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm the president of the Buffalo Bills alumni, and
Yeah.
so we have an organization here that does a lot of fundraising over the years. This year we had three major events. We had a golf tournament. We raised $100,000 in that golf tournament. We had a music fest, which is the first time we've done that. I kind of organized that because I play guitar, and I told Butch Roll, Lou Picone, Doug Flutie to come and we'll form a band. And so we were the Buffalo Bills Blues Band, the 4Bs, Buffalo Bills Blues Band. So
Nice.
so we performed on stage that night. Doug Flutie plays a mean drum. I don't know if you've ever seen him play, but that guy
Yes.
yeah, so it was fun. We raised about $35,000, and then we also just recently had a meat raffle. Now, meat raffles typically you maybe pull in $5,000 if you're lucky. We pulled in $20,000 on just a meat raffle. So, have you ever done a meat raffle?
Not me, but I don't know if Tom has.
So I have not been to one, but I know my sister and brother-in-law have definitely been to them before. And I
Yeah.
mean, great way. I mean, they can really pull in some good funds, and a lot of times, if you're one of the lucky winners, you can walk away with some fun stuff out of it.
Oh yeah. There were a lot of big winners. Not everybody can win, but everybody was just so good to donate because we had other items. That we had a basket raffle, we had a live auction. We auctioned off James Cook jersey, a Khalil Shakir jersey. Uh, Jim Kelly gave us a whole bunch of stuff. He gave us about 5 different items that were signed. So yeah, that's our main purpose for our alumni group. We just want to raise funds for charities and have a good time doing it too. Have a good time doing it.
Yeah. So sorry, Tom. What were you going to say,
Yeah,
Tom?
definitely a great cause, and of course, hey, we want to extend the offer to you too. I mean, if you ever need us to help you promote a cause through the show, just let us know. We're happy to do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna eventually start offering associate memberships to our alumni. We want people to help us in our mission, and that's basically to help raise money to support charities. And all the money that we raise do go to charities. The only thing we pay for is the supplies, the event manager, and that's it. Everything else goes right into the charitable. In fact, we're going to be doing a giveaway on December. What's the date? December 18th. We're going to be giving $5,000 to Dion Dawkins and his Dion's Dreamers, and we're going to be giving $5,000 to who was the other one? Well, I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but it'll come to me in a minute. But yeah, that's we're looking at doing other things like fishing tournaments, a casino night, maybe a Texas Hold'em tournament. So I got a lot of different ideas for that. But the great thing is we got people here in Buffalo that really appreciate the old timers, guys like myself. I'll be 70 next year, so I'm not a spring chicken anymore. And we have a lot of guys that are kind of aging out. We've had a few deaths over the past few years, and so we're trying to bring in some new blood in this organization. Some of the younger rookies, some of not rookies, the younger alumni. Because you got to keep infusing new blood into your organization, or you're going to get stagnant. So anyway, yeah, that's it.
That's actually pretty cool, though. But you mentioned something about a band. Do you play an instrument in there, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I play guitar.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
This is getting interesting. If you want to know really quick, I play the banjo.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Banjo's a fun. I owned one time. It's a fun instrument to play, but there, I don't know. Unless you're playing an Eagles tune, it's hard to incorporate that banjo into modern day music.
Well, I try, but it's usually like 50-50 split, depending on what I play. Like, I play a lot of, like, Christmas songs throughout, like, the holiday spirit, around this time.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then I also do banjos, which I've been looking for a goddamn partner for like 3 years, and there's like nobody out there. And I'm just like, who the hell am I going to play that song with?
Oh, I got to tell you the story. So
Yeah, go for it.
after I retired from the Bills, I went back about 5 years later, and I went into the tunnel that leads to the dressing rooms. And while I'm down there, I see these huge trucks out there, and they're loading all these video cassettes into it. They're throwing them away, and they were
Really?
videos of our games from back in the day. So I jumped up on top of that truck, and I got all of my highlights out of there, or as many as I could find, because they were just dumping this stuff away, and I couldn't believe they were doing that. It was like they're throwing away the history of the game. I was able to actually sell some of those to NFL Films. They wanted them, and they said, "Look, if you send it to us, we'll put it on a digital disc and send it back to you, but we keep the original." I said, "Hey, oh, absolutely, I want." But so anyway, when I got all these videos, some of them had my highlights, some of them didn't. And I had gotten, after a number of years, I had gotten all of my videos where I'd gotten an interception in the game. I'd collected them all, 10 of them. But there was an 11th one I was missing, and it was this game against New England. It was the very first game I ever started. And I took an interception. I forget who was the quarterback. Oh, God, the big, tall, long neck guy. I can't remember. But anyway, he throws a pass all the way across the field. I intercepted. I've got 80 yards in front of me, but there's this big lineman. He came and he cut me off and prevented me from going all the way. But it was just, it was amazing that that all these years I was looking for that interception, and guess who sent it to me? It was Steve Grogan, the quarterback I intercepted. He said, "Jeff, I got a copy of that game, so I'll send it to you." And so he sent it to me, and there's how they show players after they screw up on the field.
Oh yeah.
They want to get his reaction. So they're doing that to him, and he's got his head down on the bench, and he's like, and he's the one that sent me the video. I was like, that's pretty nice. That's sportsmanship right there, boy. Brotherhood. It's a brotherhood of the NFL, and it was just, so I have all 11 of them on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel that shows every single one of my interceptions. But my proudest moment as a Buffalo Bill was when we played Miami for the first time in 1980. They were the home opener. They had beaten us 20 straight times. 20 straight times. Still the longest losing streak in the history of the NFL. And I had 4 takeaways in the game, still a record to this day for the Buffalo Bills. I had 3 interceptions and a fumble recovery in that game. We finally beat them. People could just storm the field. This was the first game of the year. They tore down the goalposts. First game of the year. I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of football, where a team wins a game, first game of the year, and they tear down the goalposts.
Right.
I
was gonna say, because it's usually like I understand like the first Super Bowl run, I remember it happening, but I don't remember it happening any other time.
Yeah. They did it in Buffalo again after that, years later, when Kelly was there. He had run like it was 3rd or 4th down and goal or whatever, and he ran it in for the touchdown, and the fans stormed the field. And what was interesting is the very next week they were afraid this could happen again, because we were playing the Jets at home, and so they brought all these mounted sheriff on horses out on the field to protect, and keep the fans off the field. That was pretty interesting to see that happen. I guess they were trying to protect the assets. The goalposts were about $30,000 a piece.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, they're pretty expensive. And one of them got taken up all the way to Ralph Wilson's box.
Nice.
I'm sure he looked at it and thinking, I got to pay for those. They threw one of them over the stadium. They threw it over the edge of the stadium.
Oh, jeez.
And that's crazy. That's Buffalo. That's Buffalo fans for you right there.
Yeah, that takes a special breed to do that. I until you just said that, I knew about the whole, bringing the goalpost up to his box, but the other part with throwing it over, that's new to me. Holy shit.
Yeah, and that's something.
That's crazy.
Now they're, obviously this is the last year the Bills will be in the stadium, so luckily I've got tickets to the last game, and I'm not sure if they plan on doing anything with former players. I had suggested as the president of the Bills alumni, that they bring all the guys that ever played in that stadium in Highmark out there, and maybe even the guys that played before that. Just as a farewell gesture, to the fans, just to wave and to say thanks for cheering all these years and supporting us. But I don't know if they're planning on doing anything like that. But as I mentioned before the show, they did honor the surviving members of the 1965 AFL championship team. It's been 60 years since that championship season, and I thought that was nice. They had Ed Rakowski was there, Paul McGuire, Booker Edgerton. A lot of the guys, as I mentioned earlier, have passed away, but it's nice to know that we did have some championships that were in Buffalo, even though they weren't NFL championships. AFL championships were pretty hard to come by too.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it's one of those things. I'm glad back in May I actually got to be in the stadium, and I don't have any games for this year. I do want to go into the new stadium once it opens up. But one of the things I'll remember, besides of course the Dallas game, where the two of us were able to be there when Cook ended up running for over 170 yards in the rain. But one of the things that was actually really cool is I actually was one of the extras in that Hallmark movie that just came out, which is Holiday Touchdown, Bill's Love Story. So I was actually one of the extras in the crowd. And part of it, I actually, for the first and only time, I actually got to walk across the field, be on the 50, and actually get to see everything from field level. And it's just walking out on that field, that was just something special. And it's not something you always get to do, but to actually be able to do it,
I wish
at home.
I wish every fan could have the experience of coming down that tunnel and listening to, like back when I played, we had 80,000 fans, but just listening to the roar of the crowd as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're getting ready to be announced to run on the field, man, there's not much else like that. I think maybe being announced at a rock concert in front of 100,000 people, that might, and that's what I'm aiming at. That's my next goal.
Yeah. Well,
I want to play in front of 80,000 people.
That's pretty neat. That'd be pretty neat. But it's definitely, out of all the games I got to see there, that was one of the, even though it wasn't a game, it was basically 4 hours filming. It was just being on the field was a great thing. Yeah. Although there is a quick story, we'll jump into the next question, but we did actually do what we called cursing the field in Pittsburgh, because we actually were on the field as part of a stadium tour a couple days before.
Oh, yeah?
Wow. Yeah. So
the whole 4-0 for stadium tours right now.
Yeah. So the Curse in the Field project, Jeff, is we go on a stadium tour because we have a thing called Road to 32. It's so far, as of this recording, my wife and I in total have done 13 different stadiums, and the Steelers were lucky number 13. And what we do is, because Tom was with us in those 4 trips of those time frame since 2022, Kansas City, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati, 3 of them we had the opportunity to go on the field. But when we say we curse the field, we literally mean we're wearing our Bills gear every tour we've done, and we touch the grass turf within 48 hours before kickoff. And I'm just like, we got to curse the field, otherwise the Bills don't win. And every single game that we've ever gone on a tour for any of those teams, the Bills usually win.
Yeah. Well, Cincinnati, they didn't, because they had no tour. But actually, it was Seattle we went to last year.
Yeah, you guys need to let the Bills know this so that they can let you on the field and do your magic, your black magic, I should say.
Yes.
But no, we got to come out of the tunnel over in Pittsburgh, and then it's like, and then go onto the field. It's like, hey, it's like touch the field on the end zone.
Yeah. Every player kind of has little things that they I guess are like superstitious about, maybe, tying their shoes a certain way or putting on their gear a certain way. With me, everything had to be perfect. I was like, my socks had to be like right where they're supposed to be. I had wristbands; they had to be perfect. I had a pre-game routine that I went through. And I wonder how many other guys do that. I was always extremely nervous before I went on the field. It wasn't after I'd gotten hit a few times that I finally settled down, but I tried to get that hit in as early as possible.
Yeah,
Nice,
everybody has their own
nice.
little traditions. I mean, I know that obviously I'm sure you know about Josh Allen with like before every game he goes to the men's locker room and he just pukes out the toilet before he goes on the field every game.
That's probably a good thing. That's a good thing. That if one of my coaches said, "Look, when you don't get that feeling anymore, it's time to retire."
Mhm.
You know, and he's probably right. He's probably right. You need to have a little bit of anxiety going in. And then after a few hits and stuff, you settle into the game.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. It's
But
like, or you get that one hit and it wakes you right up. It's like, hey, it's go time now.
well, just as long as it's not the kind of hit that makes you have to do smelling salts.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I tell you, I see a lot of guys lately getting their heads hit, and I think and getting a concussion. Um, and it's kind of, I don't know. We've sued the NFL over the concussion issue, as you guys know, and
Yeah.
we actually won. I consider it a win because they settled with us and they
Hmm.
paid out over $1.4 billion to former players that have had concussion issues, and you know, you know, a lot of them are just like low level dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, CTE. Uh, but it's a concern. Every player that goes on that field, you never know when that it could be your time to get dinged or whatever. It's players are faster, they're smarter, stronger, more flexible, everything than we were back when I played. If my team when I played tried to play one of the teams today, we'd get crushed so bad it'd be like high school going against college or college going against the NFL. So a lot of big guys out there and a lot of guys that are stronger, faster, and more flexible than we were.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I actually do have a question about 1980 because I know that was like 10 minutes ago, but it's a pretty big year in your career. But one thing I want to mention real quick is that Tom Caitlin, your defensive coordinator throughout those years in the early, 80s and late 70s, was apparently, from what I was reading about him, he was a big, like, he put you in a situation as a key member of the Bermuda Triangle, as it was described as. What made that unit so special to you guys, and what was the team chemistry like for you guys?
Yeah, Chuck Knox did a really good job of assembling rookies and veterans. And he had a real, you know, just a knack at bringing a guy in that maybe is being discarded from another team. Somebody like Phil Villapiano. Okay, Phil played for the Oakland Raiders for many years when he was just a devastating player. Well, we brought him to Buffalo at the latter end of his career, but he was a good player still, but not like he was in his prime. But he was there for leadership, and he just had a way of motivating us, man. You got to have guys like that on your team. Conrad Dobler, another one. We brought him from St. Louis. Now he was known as he wrote a book, They Call Me Dirty, and he was called the dirtiest player in the NFL. But he brought toughness to the offensive line. I kind of see that happening with Buffalo right now. They're really starting to kick their running game into high gear, and that James Cook is having just a time of his life running through some
Hmm.
holes that they're building. But they got a tough. Their offensive line did not. I don't think a single one of them got moved last year, but this year they've had some more injuries. Spencer Brown's gone down a couple times, and they've had to mix it up a little bit, but they've done a pretty good job. And some of the guys that have replaced them have come in and done a good job too. But man, their running game is really clicking now. If they can keep
Yeah.
that going the rest of the year, they can win out. They still have to be able to throw the ball, obviously. And one of the things I liked about the last game, I know I'm going on here about the
Oh,
tournament.
it's good. Go for it. Mhm.
This is going to be aired so a little at a later date. So I might be making predictions here that don't come true or not, but I hope they do, because I think Josh Allen, now that they're starting to incorporate him into the running game and calling runs specifically for him, that's going to help this team. Because then teams are going to have to do like what they do with Mahomes. They're going to have a spy, a guy that kind of just mirrors out, but that takes him
Mhm.
out of coverage. That's one less guy you got to worry about in coverage. And so that's going to help Josh in his throwing game too. Um, so I think they've got. some promising, days ahead of them here. I just hope that everybody can stay healthy. They got some of their guys have gone down. Joey Bosa's down now. That they're going to really miss him. And Bernard, he's out. He's one of their best tacklers.
Yeah.
But they got some pretty decent backups, and they'll be able to hold down the fort. Their defense. I get a little worried about them at times. They've let the run kind of dominate them in a couple games. But and their tackling has been a little bit suspect. So hopefully the safeties are going to take better angles. Earlier in the year they were just taking bad angles. And if the running back, is got any speed at all, he's gonna blow by you if you're not taking the right angles. But so yeah, I'm looking forward to this next game, man. It's against Cincinnati, and Joe Burrow is coming back.
Yeah, and it'll also be interesting too because of course how we acquired Darnell Savage this past week. So so see what he might add into the game plan, especially with him being a safety. So it gives us some good depth there at least too.
Sure. Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people really got down on Sean McDermott after the Miami game, and then after the Texans game, and but he's steady. I like him. He just seems to be able to get the guys to buy into the game plan, and that's important. When you lose faith in your head coach, man, things fall apart fast, really fast. I mean, we experienced that in Buffalo after Chuck Knox left, and they hired Kay Stevenson. It was like, oh my God, he didn't have the kind of skills to motivate players that other coaches have, and it just didn't work.
Right. And then really from there, I mean, the only next good coach we really had after that was Marv Levy. And then, of course, then we had the drought between when he left and when McDermott came in.
Yeah. And thank God it was Joe Burrow that saved us the one year. I mean, that was the first year we got back to the playoffs. They were playing, I think it was Pittsburgh, and they threw a last-second pass. They scored a touchdown, and the Bills were still in the locker room after the game. They had just played, and they all started cheering because they
yeah,
and
Cal. Oh, it was the Ravens?
Yeah, he said Steelers. It was the Ravens.
Okay.
It
was Baltimore because I think you said Pittsburgh at that time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was the Ravens. You're right. Yeah. So Joe Burrow's coming back. I hope he's still got cobwebs on him.
Right, or that steel plate in his foot's not doing too well or something.
Whatever, I don't like to wish injury on any player because it's just a devastating thing. I had 4 knee surgeries, arthroscopic surgeries while I was there, and then the last one I had in 1983 was 1983. It was a total reconstruction of my left knee, and I actually came back and started working out with the team, but they had put me on injured reserve after that, and my knee never really got back to the same level that it was before the injury. It's just for a defensive back to suffer a multiple, this was my medial lateral cruciate ligament, my lateral collateral ligament, and then the posterior and the anterior cruciate. They did all of them. So I'm lucky I'm even walking, I think, at this point. But I'm getting around pretty good, I got a nice NFL pension, which I appreciate.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you're right about that. Hey, my pension is more right now than it ever was annually playing for the Bills.
Really?
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know it is crazy. I came in, I don't mind divulging this. I got a $20,000 signing bonus, and I got a $30,000 base salary my first year. So, as a rookie, $50,000 for a kid that's coming out of college and had a pot to piss in, basically. I like that. But then the next year, my salary went up to $37,500, and then it went to $45,000, and then we went on strike, and they set minimum salary, and I went up to $80,000, and then my last year I got $100,000, and then I retired after that. But yeah, my pension's greater than any year I ever played for the Bills.
Very cool. That's very cool.
It's nice. It is a good thing. And I attribute that to the active players. They're the only ones that can really do it. They have to agree with the owners on it, and And for a number of years there, they weren't doing anything for former players. So we really lit them up on the negligence of the pension plan for the pre-1993 players. And they finally started boosting it. So we're at a good level now.
Well, it's good to see, and you guys deserve it. I mean, you played just as hard as everybody else does, and actually, I would even argue it was even a tougher era back then because
Yeah.
they don't like the players now with what they have. I mean, they didn't have what you guys had back then.
Yeah, they didn't, and not only that, but the rules have changed quite a bit since I played. We could back in my day, you could clothesline somebody, you could crack back on them, you could,
Probably like horse collar somebody, or
you can molest them on the field. I mean, it was like anything goes almost, and then the head slapping, and crazy stuff like that. They finally, came to their senses and realized that they shouldn't be glorifying the big hits. Remember I forget who used to do it. Every week they do the biggest hits and they'd show heads colliding and people getting knocked out and stuff. And
I could probably name one linebacker in your playing days that actually did that, and I would say Jack Lambert was pretty big on that.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. Jack, and there were a lot of guys that were told to play like that, to get out there and what's the guy for the Oakland Raiders? He hit.
I'm trying to think of. Oh, is it Jack Tatum?
Yeah, Jack Tatum. So he hit Darryl Stingley and paralyzed him for the rest of his life, and it was and he had written a book saying that he was taught to play that way. He was taught to kill the other guy, literally. Now they're fortunately they've got rules where you can't hit a defenseless player who's going up to catch a football, especially you hit them up high. They don't care how anymore if you hit them low, which can be just as equally dangerous. If you hit somebody in the knees and you swing them around upside down. But hey, that's football, man. I have no regrets. I just played in a different era. That it is what it is, and it was what it was. And I'm thankful I had an opportunity. There were a lot of guys in college that I knew wanted to play in the NFL, but they got hurt and they had injuries and they never could, get there. But, I was one of the fortunate ones.
Yeah,
definitely. Now, kind of going off of that, if you had to look back now, is there anything about how defensive players trained back at that time versus what's out there today that could have helped extend a career?
Well, yeah. I mean, the equipment has gotten better. Let me just say that. Although some of these guys, I used to try to get away with wearing almost like shorts in college.
Mm-hmm.
And they banned it. I mean, I got a picture of me playing against Georgia, and I had shorts on almost. I didn't have no knee pad at all, and I was like, I don't want anything covering my knees. It's going to make me slower, But then the NCAA informed our coaches that that's a no. You're not allowed to do that. So I had to go back to wearing a pad on my knee. In the NFL, you see very few players that have a pad on their knee now. Maybe the offensive linemen, and defensive linemen, but the skill positions, God, most of those guys are just wearing almost like shorts. It's amazing, But the shoulder pads are better, the helmets are better, all the padding that they do have is better, and of course the rule changes have made the game a little bit safer, but not a whole lot. You're still, no matter what you do, if you look at the injury report every week, it's amazing. Hundreds of players, with injuries, everything you can imagine, from the down to the big toe to the top of your head. These guys. So it is a dangerous game, but man, I wish I could play it still, man. I wish I could get out there and there's times when I feel like I could have made that play.
Yeah, right.
But the body's, the mind's willing, but the body's not able.
Well, do you think that maybe if you were playing today, you think you would be able to catch up with the big boys?
Well, yeah, I was a big player myself. I was 225, 6'4". I was one of the bigger safeties in the NFL at that time. And I didn't let there were very few guys that ran over me. I'm trying to think who's the guy for the Houston Oilers, Earl Campbell. He ran over me one time. And but I tackled a lot of good running backs. Walter Payton, I tackled him on numerous occasions. The Miami Dolphins. Who's the fullback they had? This guy had the biggest head I've ever seen in my life. Oh, yeah, that's the Alzheimer's kicking in. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. No,
It'll
I
come
mean,
to me. But the fans know who I'm talking about. It was back during Bob Greasy era, and they had this huge running back. He was just a, amazing player. But so we had some good running backs in my day. But some of these guys you see nowadays, man, like the guy for the Ravens,
Derrick Henry.
yeah, Derrick. Oh, he's in another level,
Yeah,
That,
easily
But
probably one of the best in the league.
I would rather tackle him though than somebody like James Cook, because you can't. James Cook is so low to the ground as a defensive back. It's hard to see what he's doing in the backfield.
Mm.
So you as a safety, you have to really stay back. You can't if you get caught up in the traffic, and that's what's happened to some of these safeties for Buffalo. They're getting caught up in the traffic, and then they can't get an angle on the running back. They got to stay back, unfortunately, and wait till the running back makes his move and then get in there, because the little guys, you can't see them that well. Even linebackers have a hard time once the play starts seeing some of the littler, smaller running backs that are out there.
Mm.
Yeah, but I was gonna ask you one other thing too. Is that because you've also had a huge impact in the community with Buffalo, obviously being the president of the Buffalo Bills alumni, which, by the way, sir, that is a hell of an achievement on its own. But
Thank you.
yeah, so the other thing that you also did in the early 2000s, I want to say like 2002, 2008, I think Tom was in high school when this was happening. But one thing you did have off the field was hosting the Jeff Nixon Sports Report and then writing for Fourth and Goal Unites to become a major force for retired players throughout their NFL careers and whatnot. What honestly motivated you to step into that advocacy role? And was there a specific moment when you realized that former players needed someone to speak up for them on their behalf?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it started with I was invited to go to the national conference that the National Football League Players Association has every year, and they do it for the active players. And they have a segment for the retired players, for the former players to come in. And there were, people were talking about the pension plan and how bad it was, and it was pretty much a consensus in the room. And we kept telling people like Gene Upshaw, who was the uh, executive director of the NFL players, that hey, you guys got to do something to boost it. He wasn't very, he didn't help us very much. He said, hey, you guys are never going to have pensions as good as the former, the current players. Well, we knew that, but at least do something to boost them a little bit, So I didn't like the arrogance and his attitude, so I started writing a blog, and I just called it Jeff Nixon Report. And then first I was writing for Fourth and Goal, and that was Bruce Laird and some other guys that for the Baltimore Colts, and he really he liked what I was saying, so he gave me a platform. He said, hey, you can write for us. So I started doing that, and then I went to my own thing, and I actually was the blogger for the NFL alumni for a number of years too. And so I started trying to get more data, more research. I didn't want to say anything. It's difficult when you're writing a blog. You have to be right 100% of the time, because if you're not, people will jump on you so quickly. And so there were a couple instances where I made a mistake, but I always went back and corrected it. But I think I made an impact because I was informing players how the best way we can do it to get the pension. And one of the things I said is we've got to get our Hall of Famers involved. That's the only thing that's going to get the attention of the public and the owners and the NFL Players Association. So I started getting guys like Joe DeLamielleure and Harry Carson and other guys like that to join forces. And then John Riggins and his wife approached me one year and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be our blogger and write about issues, and what we'll do is we'll get all the Hall of Famers together, And so we started utilizing that, and that made a difference. Once you got your best players complaining about their pensions, and and actually telling people what they were, and how little they were getting on a monthly basis, I think it made a difference. And now I think they've done just about all they can. They may give us another boost, but I don't know if we'll ever see it like it was in the past two um, negotiations that we had over the collective bargaining agreement. But yeah, that's probably one of my best accomplishments in my life. I think, because I was sitting here fighting for guys that some of them just had no way of knowing how to fight this, how to fight the man, how to fight the system. And I kind of gave them a voice, and I'm proud of that. And when I finally retired from that, I sent a letter out there, an email out to everybody. I had a mail list of 8,000 former players,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was sending this out almost weekly. And so at the very end, I got a bunch of Hall of Famers. They commented on my blogging over the 10-year period. And it was just nice to hear them say that they appreciate everything that I did.
Yeah, because it's funny you were saying that, because I truly believe that if you still have that mentality where you become the voice for those who are looking for a place to kind of speak up about their issues, post-career issues at CTE and whatnot, I honestly believe, just from a human level, if you started a YouTube channel, Jeff, I mean, you have one, but if you have your own, like, weekly interviews with, like, other players, kind of like what we do, but talking about, like, post-career injuries and what they could do as, like, advocates for the game, such as yourself and whatnot. Personally, I think that would get a lot of people, tuning in, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, those the podcasts that I did for the Jeff Nixon Sports Report. There's you can still listen to them. I mean, there's a website that I think it was Air America or something like that was airing the podcast for me at that point. And I had pretty much all the people that I interviewed were Hall of Fame players or all pro players that were on that. So I got people that people listen to. Who's Jeff Nixon? They don't know me, but they know Joe DeLamiler. They know Harry Carson. They know the guys that I was bringing on the show. So yeah, you gotta hit them where it hurts the most, I guess. And I did with the Hall of Fame players.
Definitely, but I like I said, I just think now that you have me thinking about it, that I think that's what you should do. But I definitely want to hear that those interviews, Jeff, if you don't mind. I would love to hear
Oh
those.
yeah. I can. I'll show you the link.
Yeah,
And all we were talking about was like health benefits for former players, increasing the pension benefits. What are we doing? What are they doing to help protect players? The concussion lawsuit issues, just everything that you can think of. We were talking about on that show. Not so much football. I mean, I did cover their, who the player was, the things like that, what kind of career they had, and I asked a lot of questions about their football experience, and the same thing you guys do. But I wanted to hear more about, hey, what do you think about the pension plan? What do you think about the health benefits? Those kind of things.
right, which makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like a federal organization for blue collar workers, or
Yeah.
like upper ground jobs, like things, people like that on a regular basis. That's what that sounds like, at least to me. I think though, Jeff, that it brings a lot of people in, and I also think you hear different like perspectives from different people. And as soon as you go right into the heart of it, then there's a pretty good chance that once you twist the knife, you're gonna probably get a different view on everything that when you talk to these people.
Yeah. You always want to get different perspectives on how things should be done, and that's always helped. And with our alumni group, we meet on typically a monthly basis. I got great wisdom and advice from guys that were played 50, 60 years ago. I mean, they know, and they unfortunately a lot of them were treated really bad during their time in the NFL. Um, they don't have as many protections as they do now, because the NFL Players Union itself got much stronger over the years. We finally got smart and started hiring good lawyers. The NFL had been doing it for years, and And finally, we said, hey, why aren't we hiring the best lawyers we can find? And they, the last the director they had for the NFL Players Association, Morris Smith, he came from the law
Mm-hmm.
firms, and he did a pretty good job. Got the guys better benefits, helped the NFL former players too, So it's good to have people in those leadership positions that believe in us, in the former players too, and not just the current guys.
You're a good man, Mr. Nixon. I'm not gonna lie.
Thanks.
It's good to hear.
I try to. Somebody sent me a post today. They said, "Hey, we're having our 20th Men of Integrity award ceremony," and I told the woman that was running, I said, "I was on your very first group that was installed as a man of integrity," and I still have the plaque on the wall, and I'm like, integrity is important. You gotta show up every day. Even after you've retired, you should be trying to do what you can to help people who are less fortunate than you, and that needed just a helping hand, not a handout, but a hand up. So that's what we try to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to hear. It's good to hear. Now, thinking about after your playing career ended, you ended up serving as the youth bureau director for the Buffalo and Erie County for 13 years. What inspired you to pursue that line of work, and what was the most rewarding part of giving back to the community?
It's interesting. I got involved in politics. It was a roundabout way, but I had been a little bit active in the town that I was living in, which is Hamburg, where they have very close to the stadium, and the chairman of one of the parties. I'm not going to get into my affiliation or anything, but they came to me and they said, "Hey, we'd like you to run for supervisor of the town that that the stadium is in. You'd be a great." So I had a slogan. This time I'm running for you, and it had me with a picture of me running on the field. And
Nice.
of course, I used my Bills background to try it, but unfortunately, the Bills went on strike. Well, the NFL went on strike that year, and it was like crushed my campaign. Everybody's like, "Hey, I can't believe you guys are trying to be so greedy and get this, that, and the other." And I said, "No, it's not me. It's the active players. I'm just running for office." Don't. But they said, "But you got your football picture on the card here, so." So I don't know. That it didn't help that much, but I that was a fun time in my life. I was involved in politics for 30 years. I was what do you call it, a local steward. And so I ran the youth bureau. I ran the employment division for the city of Buffalo. I did that for 22 years, youth employment, but. Yeah, if I got my start as the youth bureau director, and it was great because we had a 21-member youth services board. We had about $10 million to work with as far as giving funds to different groups,
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of oversaw all of that, and that was rewarding because that gave me my first insight into what public service is and what agencies there are out there in Buffalo and Erie County that need help, need support. So that was very rewarding. And then as the youth bureau director, I ran the summer youth employment program. We typically hired about 2,000 young people every summer, put them in jobs all over Buffalo and Erie County. So those were very rewarding jobs, and I loved them all the way up to the day I retired, which was 2022.
Wow, that's a long time, honestly. But you know what, though, I will say, have you genuinely thought about running for because you said you got into politics a little bit. Did you ever consider running for Congress or anything at that level and just try to be like an advocate for the players, even for when that time frame?
That they did approach me to do that. They did. They wanted me to run against a woman that was she was actually the leader of the majority party at that time in the city of Buffalo, but she had kind of run afoul of the party that I was affiliated with, and so they came to me and said, "We'd like you to run against her," And I said, "Well, just as long as I got the mayor's support, because the mayor was the one that hired me to be the youth employment director for the city of Buffalo. And so he said, yeah, they'll support you. Well, I found out later on that he wasn't supporting me, wasn't going to support me at all on that. And so they asked my wife if she would run. And she said, yeah. And so she ran instead of me. And I ended up doing most of the work, though. I had to get all of her petitions signed. I had to run around. I had to get 5,000 signatures on petitions. It's not an easy thing when you're the grunt in a campaign like that. You know, people don't realize all the work that's got to be done, getting signatures on petitions to get on the ballot and all that stuff. I didn't really like that part of it, and so when I finally retired from my job with the government, I said, that's it. I'm done with politics too. I'm back from that. You know, but I'm still, you know, I'm still active, and I still there's things that I support and that I want to do that may touch on politics from time to time. You know.
Right. But the funny thing is that we recently had Rory Fitzpatrick on our show not that long ago, and he ran for town supervisor. He was a defenseman for the Buffalo Sabres about 20 years ago, and he brought up an interesting concept to us. He said that politics is a very interesting strategic game because you have to play along with certain people, but then you have to kind of do your own thing at the same time, but you're also kind of stuck in the middle because you have to serve for the people. So I kind of see where that is, but also Gavin, what 5,000 signatures? That's a major pain in the ass.
Oh yeah. Though I mean that's just part of it. I mean you have to set up you have to be very diligent about the funds that you raise and reporting that to the state. Boy, they'll get you really big time if you mess up on that. You know, they did come to me one time a year after I had helped my wife with her campaign. They said, "Hey, we see some discrepancies in this. Can you tell us what happened?" And then I did. You know, and they said it was fine. You know, but it's hard to be your true self when you're a politician because you're catering to so many different groups out there, and sometimes you kind of you get lost in your way and you sell your soul for the almighty buck or for the power that comes with and prestige that comes with an office like that. If you're not in it for public service, then get out. You know, don't waste my time. Don't, you know, we don't need any slackers in there. You know, do your job. Do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I do, before we get to the next question, well, it's the second to last one, is I just want to say thank you for coming on tonight, Jeff. This means the world to us.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love it. You guys have a nice, relaxed atmosphere there, and you've been doing this a long time, so you know people know you, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And if anybody wants to see what we're doing here in Buffalo, you can always go to our website. It's buffalobillsalumni.com or foundation.com. Buffalo Bills Alumni Foundation.com. And we post a lot of our activities on there. You can get involved as a volunteer. You can donate money. You can do just about anything, you know. So, so check us out there.
Yeah, definitely. We can always link it on the show as well too, and go from there. So we're certainly happy to help in any ways we can.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah. So you've done a lot for the city of Buffalo within the last, I want to say 35, 40 years, mainly since you've been drafted. And you've gotten heavily involved with politics. You've gotten heavily involved on television. You've been an advocate for players' rights. You've played for the goddamn team. You've been very heavily involved with Western New York and Southern Ontario, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Don't forget my music background.
And your music background, yes. Can't forget that.
Yeah.
But what does the city of Buffalo mean to you today?
Oh wow, they've embraced me from day one. You know, I just think, and they've embraced this team. You know, we probably have one of the largest fan bases. You know, now that we're the mafia. You know, it used to be Bills backers groups. Now they're all calling themselves mafia. At one time I told the Bills Mafia, I said, I didn't quite understand why you would want to use like a derogatory term that was used to, to represent Italians and, the mafia and stuff like that. But it's, they basically redefined the term, it's mafia just means you're a collection of people that intensely love your team, and you're into it to death. I mean, it's like a brotherhood. Uh, you gotta have everybody's back. You gotta believe. We saw a film that was earlier this year. It was called Unbelievable. Amazing, but it's about a family that two families that are near each other, and they're getting ready for a Super Bowl party because the Bills are finally in the Super Bowl, and they end up winning it. But it's just all the crazy stuff. It's a blue collar type movie, but and I love the Hallmark one they just had on too. I've got the guy that plays. They had a picture of this guy playing Santa Claus, and they had and a friend of mine does Mrs. Claus at Fiddler's, which is the store that they had in the movie.
Yep, been there before.
Yeah, they're going to be coming to our Christmas party where we're going to be giving this money out to Dion's Dreamers, and that's going to be fun. That's going to be a good time.
Definitely. But you know what, though? Like I said, you're heavily involved with the city, and you could definitely just tell from having to be in the atmosphere that a lot of players come out the same way as you did. And they say,
I'm sorry, you froze there.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah.
Finish his question.
Yeah. So, or actually, trying to think what he was even going to ask, because I think he was just kind of following up. He was just kind of going after off of
it's
something.
The last question. It's the last question.
Right. Yeah, I could definitely go off the last one though. So
Yeah.
So of course, Jeff, when people look back at your time at football, what is the one thing as a player and as a coach that you hope that people remember the most?
I don't know. That's a good question. I hope they remember that, that we were kind of like the beginnings of the NFL, and what it is today. That we kind of started, um, the Bills on a upward track. When we beat Miami in 1980 for the first time in 10 years, it was like we finally got the monkey off our back, and now we can compete. And we did, and obviously we went through a big drought there, 16 years without going playoffs. And a lot of that was, I think, coaching, and general management decisions that were being made. But I just love the fact that the people in Buffalo have embraced our Buffalo Bills Alumni Foundation and the work that we do. And I just look forward to doing more of this in the future, and raising money for charities, and getting out there and just having a good time with the fans, and the camaraderie that comes with that, and being with our with the guys that I played football with, and guys before me and guys after me. It's an amazing brotherhood.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, and it's big too. Of course, I know the current fans. I mean, I know that they look back and they enjoy what the alumni has done, and I know that they have a really good, healthy respect for the players that from those eras as well. So it's definitely great to see that. And then of course Bob's back. His Wi-Fi decided to drop, so that's what happened on his end.
Oh, okay.
I'm alive.
Yeah, he is here. So, but no, I was gonna say, certainly, of course, you're active with the Alumni Foundation. Tell us where our viewers can go find you for upcoming events, and if they want to learn more about the foundation, and where they can donate.
Yeah, anybody can go to our website, Buffalo Bills Alumni Foundation.com. And and I do have my Facebook page. If anybody's welcome to try and friend me there or get information, it's just Jeff Nixon at AOL.com. And it's or excuse me, not AOL, Facebook. Um, yeah, just look up Jeff Nixon. You can see me on there. I also have a YouTube channel where you can see all my music playing, my football highlights, and all kinds of other good stuff. That's where I communicate with a lot of people is over Facebook. You can reach a lot of people if you do it the right way. And so we'd love to have people come and volunteer for different events that we do. We can always use volunteers. And like I said, we're going to be starting to offer associate memberships for $100 a person, and they'll get a shirt, and they'll get mention in our Buffalo Bills Alumni Foundation website. We'll have some different events that they can get in for free, and ones that they can get reduced price on, and VIP passes, and so we're looking at building this what we started. We want to keep expanding it and get as many people involved as possible.
That's good to hear. And of course, if there's ways we can help you, let us know. I mean, we're happy to promote it as well. And it's definitely one of those things. We want to we respect the previous eras, and we want to be a part of that. So it's definitely great to have you here. And I was gonna say, before we wrap up, Bob, were there any other questions or things you'd like to ask?
No, not at the moment, but we do want to say, Jeff, thank you so much again for your time. We truly appreciate it, brother, and we loved having you for sure.
Yeah, hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me on, and as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills. Let's get that one.
All right, you guys have a good one now.
You too. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
All right, take care now. I'll be on again. I'll be on again.
All right,
you
awesome.
will.
All right,
will.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care now.
All right.